Not every story starts with a hero. Some begin with a little girl in the rain trying to make a living. It was one of those nights when people hurried home, blind to the faces they passed. But in the middle of that cold, crowded market, a little girl stood with a box of broken toys and a hope she could barely hold on to. "Sir, please buy my truck," she said softly. "It's for Mum, she's sick." Most would have walked away, but Jason Statham didn't. And what he discovered moments later was far more than a little girl's plea. Before we continue, thank you for always watching and supporting these stories. Every view, every comment, every shared moment means more than you know, because these stories aren't just about Jason Statham or what happens on screen. They're about the quiet acts of courage and kindness that still exist in this world, the kind we often overlook until it's too late. So if you believe that even a small heart can carry a big story, stay with us. This one will touch yours. The rain had started before sunrise. It wasn't the gentle kind that people romanticize. It was the sort that carried a bite, cold enough to cut through layers and soak the soul beneath. The city streets reflected the gray sky, slick with puddles that swallowed the light of the morning traffic. Jason Statham walked with his hood up, shoulders squared against the chill, hands tucked into his coat pockets. London had that way of feeling both alive and empty, noise everywhere, but not a single sound that mattered. He finished a late-night shoot and was heading home through the back streets near Camden Market. He liked walking after work. It reminded him of before the noise, before the cameras, before the constant pretending. The smell of rain mixed with the faint sweetness of roasted chestnuts from a nearby stall. Most of the vendors were packing up, their breath visible in the damp air. Only one stall caught his eye, a small cardboard table under a plastic tarp, half collapsing under the weight of the water. Behind it, a little girl stood barefoot, her jacket 2 sizes too big, clutching an old wooden toy truck. At first, he thought she was just lost. Then he saw the handwritten sign leaning against a milk crate. "For sale, one toy truck, £5 for Mum's medicine." Jason slowed, his instincts tugging at him. He'd seen that kind of handwriting before, childish, hopeful, the kind that still believed the world might listen if you asked politely enough. The girl couldn't have been older than 7. Her hair was tied into a messy braid, strands sticking to her wet cheeks. Her hands trembled from the cold, but her eyes, those eyes didn't flinch when people walked past without looking. A businessman in a navy suit passed her, shaking his umbrella as if the world owed him dryness. Another woman pulled her child closer, pretending not to notice. The girl just stood there, the wooden truck in her hands, her lips barely moving. "Sir," she whispered, "please buy my truck, it's for Mum, she's sick." Jason stopped. Something in the way she said it, quiet, without begging, made his chest tighten. He stepped closer, lowering his hood. "What's your name, love?" The girl blinked, surprised that someone had actually answered. "Macy." "All right, Macy," Jason said softly. "Where's your mum?" She pointed to a small flat across the street, one of those narrow buildings with peeling paint and a broken intercom. "She's sleeping. The medicine man said he won't give it again unless we pay." Jason crouched to her level, his coat dripping rain onto the pavement. "And this truck, yours?" She nodded. "Mum made it with Dad before." Her voice trailed off. She hugged it tighter. "It's the only thing left." Jason studied her. The wood was worn smooth, the wheels chipped. It was the kind of toy built with love, not money. He could tell it meant everything to her. He glanced at the sign again. £5. That was all she was asking, not a handout, a fair trade. He reached for his wallet, then paused. Something didn't add up. The flat she pointed to, lights off, curtains drawn tight. No sound, no neighbors around. "Macy," he said gently, "how long's your mum been sick?" "Since last week. She coughs a lot. I tried giving her soup, but she says it hurts her chest." Jason nodded, his mind already turning over. "You've been out here alone all morning." She shrugged, "Since it got light." He pulled out a note, not £5 but 50, and handed it to her. "Keep the truck, yeah. I'll go check on your mum." Her eyes widened. "You can't, the landlord says no strangers." Jason smiled faintly. "I'm not a stranger anymore." He crossed the street, water splashing under his boots. The closer he got, the clearer the picture became. The building wasn't just run down, it was neglected. The stairs creaked under his weight, the hallway smelled of mildew and dust. He found the flat with a half-broken door and knocked softly. No answer. He knocked again, louder. "Ma'am, it's Jason, your daughter's outside." A cough came from inside, muffled but sharp, then a weak voice. "Doors open." He pushed gently. The hinges groaned. Inside, the room was dim, curtains drawn, the air thick with the smell of damp clothes and sickness. A woman lay on a worn sofa, her skin pale, her eyes glazed with fever. Jason crouched beside her. "You're Macy's mum." She nodded faintly. "Did she sell it?" He hesitated. Not yet, she was trying. Tears welled at the corners of her eyes. "She shouldn't be out there. I told her to stay inside." Jason's voice softened. "She's trying to help you." The woman tried to sit up but winced in pain. "We've had no heat for days. The landlord said he'd fix it if I paid what I owe, but I can't even stand long enough to work." Jason looked around. The flat was nearly empty. A kettle, 2 mugs, an open envelope on the counter marked "Final Notice." He recognized the pattern. People who fell through cracks no one bothered to patch. He stood. "You need a doctor." "I can't afford." "Don't worry about that." He pulled out his phone, stepping aside to call his driver, instructing him to bring a medic he knew, someone who didn't ask too many questions. Then he glanced back at Macy through the rain-streaked window. She was still standing by the stall, counting the raindrops instead of customers. Minutes later, the medic arrived, an older man named Reese, ex-army like Jason. Together, they lifted the woman onto the couch, checked her vitals, and started a slow IV. Reese shot Jason a look. "Pneumonia, bad one, but she'll live." Jason nodded. "Keep her warm, I'll sort the rest." He stepped outside, the rain easing into a drizzle. Macy looked up, worry written all over her face. "Is she okay?" Jason knelt, meeting her gaze. "She will be. You did good, kid." She smiled, a fragile, uncertain smile, the kind you only see on children who have grown up too fast. "Are you a doctor?" He chuckled. "Not quite, just someone who doesn't like seeing good people hurt." Macy hugged her truck again. "Mum says there's more good people than bad ones. You just have to look longer." Jason's throat tightened. "She's right." As they talked, a car rolled slowly past the curb, black-tinted windows, engine humming low. Jason's instincts flickered. The car stopped for a second, then sped off. He memorized the plate without even trying. Something about that movement, the timing, the way it lingered, didn't sit right. When he returned inside, Reese was packing up. "She'll pull through if she rests, but she needs food, antibiotics, maybe a week of care." Jason nodded. "I'll handle it." He looked at the woman. "Anyone else who checks in on you, friends, family?" Her expression darkened. "Not anymore." Jason frowned. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then said quietly, "They took everything. My job, our savings, all of it, said it was an investment. Promised it would double. It was my late husband's insurance money. I just wanted a better life for Macy." Jason leaned forward. "Who took it?" Her voice trembled. "A man named Callum Hart. Said he ran a charity fund for single parents. Had an office, website, even photos with officials. But when I tried to withdraw, everything was gone." Jason's jaw tightened. The name hit something in his memory. He'd heard it before in whispers on sets, charity galas, and financial circles. Callum Hart, a man who smiled on camera and stole off stage. He stood, his tone low but steady. "Rest, I'll look into it." Macy tugged his sleeve. "Will you help Mum get our money back?" Jason looked down at her, eyes firm. "Yeah, love, I will." As he stepped outside, the rain had stopped completely. The street glistened under a pale sky, and the city felt like it was holding its breath. He pulled his phone again and called an old contact, an investigative journalist he trusted. "Rhea," he said, "need a background check on a name, Callum Hart. I think he's running something dirty again." Her voice crackled through the line. "That's a big name, Jason. You sure you want in?" He looked across the street, where Macy was now helping her mum sip water. "Yeah, some things you don't walk past." He hung up and stared at the wooden truck in Macy's hands. The paint was chipped, one wheel cracked, but it was still rolling, stubborn, like the people who refused to give up even when the world had already taken too much. And as Jason turned the corner, the headlights from that same black car flickered on again, following from a distance. Something told him this wasn't just about charity or fraud anymore. Someone had wanted that family forgotten. But he'd seen enough to know they'd chosen the wrong man to walk past. Jason didn't sleep that night. He sat by the window of his flat, rain still tapping against the glass, the city stretching below like a web of forgotten stories. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Macy, the too big jacket, the trembling hands, the way she held onto that toy truck like it was the last piece of her family that hadn't been stolen. By morning, he had a name, an address, and a reason. Rhea had done her magic. The file she sent him was thicker than he expected, pages of shell companies, fake charities, and fabricated reports. Callum Hart wasn't just stealing from struggling parents. He was orchestrating a system, using sympathy as bait, hiding behind nonprofit fronts that looked legitimate to anyone desperate enough to believe. And Macy's mom, Claire, had been one of hundreds. Jason stared at the report, jaw tightening. Not this time. He changed into dark jeans and a leather jacket, grabbed his keys, and left before dawn. The Hart Foundation for Single Families had an office that looked too good for what it claimed to be. Marble floors, gold-trimmed signage, a receptionist who smiled with the precision of someone trained to say no politely. Jason walked straight in, ignoring the security guard's hesitant step forward. "Can I help you, sir?" the receptionist asked. Jason placed a folder on the counter, his tone level. "You can get Callum Hart." She blinked. "Do you have an appointment?" "Not yet," Jason replied, flipping open the folder, exposing photographs of bank transfers and falsified grant letters. "But he'll want to make one." Something in his voice, calm, precise, made her pick up the phone without question. Within minutes, a tall man in a tailored suit appeared from the glass corridor, his smile rehearsed. "Mr. Statham," Callum said smoothly, "I didn't expect." Jason cut him off. "You took money from a mother named Claire Weller, promised her a future. Now she's half dead in a cold flat while you play charity on camera." The man chuckled softly, a sound that didn't reach his eyes. "You misunderstand. Donations are voluntary. People invest in hope. Sometimes it doesn't work out." Jason stepped closer. "She didn't invest in hope. She trusted you. There's a difference." Security began to move in, but Callum raised a hand. "It's fine, gentlemen. Mr. Statham is just passionate." Jason leaned in, voice dropping. "You think passion's the word for what I'm about to become if you don't fix this." Callum's smirk wavered for a fraction of a second. "You can't intimidate me. You're an actor, not a cop." Jason's gaze didn't move. "Yeah, but you'd be surprised what I used to be before that." The silence that followed was heavy, the kind that presses on the room until even the walls listen. Finally, Callum straightened his cuffs. "You have no proof." Jason pushed the folder toward him. "Now I do." Inside were signatures, his assistant's, bank logs connecting the charity's account to a private trust in the Cayman Islands. Rhea had dug deeper than anyone expected. Callum's face drained of color. "You have no right." Jason grabbed him by the tie, slamming him lightly against the glass wall. "I have every right when you steal from children." His voice was low, controlled, terrifyingly calm. "Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to wire back every pound you took from Claire and the rest, and you're going to do it publicly." Callum struggled. "You'll ruin me." Jason released him. "You did that yourself." By noon, Rhea had the story published online, complete with documents, photos, and testimony. Within hours, social media exploded. Charity scandal, Hart Foundation exposed for fraud. Sponsors withdrew, donations froze, reporters swarmed the building. But Jason wasn't finished. He went back to the flat that evening. The rain had stopped, leaving the air heavy but clean. Through the window, he could see Claire sitting up for the first time, Macy beside her, reading from an old children's book. When he knocked, Macy ran to open the door. "Jason." She jumped into his arms before he could even speak. "Mum's better. The medicine worked." Jason smiled softly. "I can see that." Claire stood, still weak but smiling. "You didn't have to come back." "I know," he said, "but I thought you'd want to see this." He handed her a printed statement, a bank confirmation. The money was back, every penny, plus a donation large enough to cover her rent and medical bills for the next year. Her hands shook. "How?" Jason shrugged. Call it karma or justice. Macy hugged her mother tightly. Claire's eyes filled with tears she'd been holding for too long. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to, Jason said. Just promise me you'll never stop believing people can still do good. She nodded, wiping her eyes. You made me believe that again. That night Jason stayed a while longer. Macy insisted on making tea, even though the kettle sputtered and groaned. She set it down proudly, spilling half of it on the table, and Jason pretended not to notice. Mr. Jason, she said suddenly, are you a superhero? He laughed, not even close. Then why do you help people? He thought about it, his gaze drifting to the rain-speckled window. Because once, someone helped me when I didn't deserve it. I guess I've been trying to pay that back ever since. Macy smiled, satisfied with that answer. Then you're still kind of a superhero, just without the cape. Jason chuckled, maybe. The next morning, the doorbell rang. Claire opened it to find a sleek black car parked outside. A man in a tailored suit stepped out, not Callum Hart, but someone who clearly came from his world. Mrs. Weller, he asked. I represent Mr. Harrison, the CEO of Hart Group. Claire's stomach dropped. If this is about... Not at all, the man interrupted. We've reviewed the situation. Mr. Hart's been removed. The board wanted to personally apologize. Your story opened our eyes. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a letter of acknowledgement and a check. The amount made her gasp. Jason, who had been standing in the doorway, simply crossed his arms. Guess your boss learned fast. The man nodded awkwardly. You could say that. After he left, Claire turned to Jason. I don't know how you did it. He smiled faintly. Sometimes you just have to remind people that real power's not in money. It's in doing the right thing before it's too late. Days passed. The rain finally gave way to sunlight. Macy went back to school, her laughter echoing down the stairwell every morning. Claire started painting again, something she hadn't done since before the illness. Their flat, once gray and lifeless, was filled with color again. Jason visited once more a week later, carrying something under his arm. Macy ran to the door before he could knock. You came back, she squealed. He smiled, told you I'd return. He knelt and handed her the wooden truck, restored, polished, its cracks filled, the paint fresh but still familiar. Her eyes went wide. You fixed it. Had a maid in props owe me a favor, Jason said. Thought it deserved another life. Macy hugged it to her chest. Now it'll last forever. Jason smiled. That's the idea. Claire stood in the doorway, eyes glistening again. You've done more for us than you'll ever know. He shook his head. You two did the hard part, I just helped push. That night as he walked back through the quiet streets, Jason passed the spot where he'd first seen Macy standing, the same cracked pavement, now dry under a sunset sky. The little cardboard sign was gone, but he could still hear her voice. Sir, please buy my truck, it's for Mum. He smiled to himself. That single sentence had changed everything, not because it was desperate, but because it was honest. He'd spent years in a world where people lied with smiles and promises. But that day, a child had reminded him that truth doesn't always need to shout. Sometimes, it just stands in the rain and hopes someone listens. He pulled out his phone, sending a message to Rhea. Got the story's ending. Title it The Girl Who Sold Hope. Let people know she never gave up. A few seconds later, her reply came through. Already trending. People are donating to help families like hers. Jason stared at the message for a long moment. Then he smiled and slipped the phone back into his pocket. As the sun dipped behind the buildings, a small sound broke through the hum of the city, laughter. Macy's laughter, echoing faintly through the open window above the street. And for the first time in a long time, Jason felt the world was exactly as it should be, not perfect, not fair, but still capable of kindness. He whispered under his breath, almost like a prayer. Here, as to the ones who still believe. Then he turned the corner, disappearing into the amber glow of the city. Another story closed, another soul quietly mended.